In the meantime, I would like to thank the organizers, not just our friends from Croatia, but also our friends from Spain, who have graciously allowed us to go to Croatia this time around, but I understand we might be going back to Spain next year. Thank you very much for having us. The presentation here will have a European perspective, and it will because that's the area I'm representing. I think there are a number of the issues that I'll be bringing up that are common to most of our colleagues around the world, but certainly in this respect, please excuse the European angle from the outset, and hopefully we can discuss the issues that we have with the rest of you based on your input. So, like Zelko said, it's a dynamic session here. It's not a one-way presentation thing. We will be discussing things with you. So please allow the European perspective, but let's have the discussions on a world perspective later on. The main issues that we have in Europe on the travel side are actually many. I've just tried to condense 6, 7 major issues that we have at the moment. Some of them being global, some of them being European. I'm sorry to say the EU Commission, and I'm going to put Pedro on the spot again from the start. The EU Commission is a major issue, certainly also a player in some respects with us, but I will also touch upon some of the issues that we have with the Commission. Those are the topics I will be addressing, so let's go ahead and look at what they are. The first thing is, as I said, a EU issue. It's what we call the Package Travel Directive. The Package Travel Directive was invented in 1990 and is a way to protect consumers that buy package travel. Now, package travel in our part of the world is when you buy transportation and accommodation in a package. Now, I'm sure you can imagine in 1990, nobody had heard anything about what we consider to be the basis of our business today, the internet. So the internet was not part of the Package Travel Directive, neither were a number of other issues that we've had since 1990. So the EU decided, after lengthy discussions, to revise the Package Travel Directive. And what it looks like right now, it will hopefully include an expansion of which sellers of travel will be included in the scope of the directive, because right now, if you just sell transportation or you just sell accommodation, you're not included in the Package Travel Directive. And it is a major advantage for a consumer to be covered by the directive, because there are all kinds of rules and regulations in place that protect them in case the airline goes bankrupt or the travel agent goes bankrupt, or if you don't get the kind of product that you've actually paid or think you paid for. So it's important to get as many sellers in there as possible. Unfortunately, the EU, although they would love to, I'm sure, have the powers to control the world, they don't. So this only includes EU travel agencies, but that's a start at least, and we're hoping that by or rather the Commission is hoping that by working a way through with certain of the articles in the directive, there will also be a reach out of the EU to control some sales from non-EU established sellers. It will definitely allow easier inter-EU cross-border sales. One major issue at the moment is that in the EU, you've got this interesting word called harmonization. Harmonization is when everybody has the same rules. At the moment, that is not going to be the case, unfortunately, but we are hoping that there will be some kind of minimum requirements for selling of package travel. It also includes what has been called linked and assisted travel setups. So linked travel setups in our sense is that when you buy, I'm sure you've all done that, when you bought an airline ticket, hopefully not through an airline, but maybe directly with a travel agent, you can also get linked to buy a hotel or a car rental. Not necessarily at the same vendor, but that is supposed to change, at least if it comes down to the intent of the politicians. So in other words, if you're buying air travel one place and then directed over to another website where you buy your accommodation, that could also be package travel in the future. Hopefully, As I say here, we hope we'll be creating a more level playing field internally in the EU, but at the moment not globally. And that's actually an issue that I think we should discuss hopefully later on. I know Talib Rifai is working, UNWTO is working on some kind of a minimum protecting the passenger or the traveler list of things that we should implement globally. And if that is coming into effect, it would be an interesting combination of that UNWTO charter and the package travel directive. So that was the first of the issues. Then there's another one, and I could, as my co-panelists and I agreed, we can talk all day about IATA. We will not do that. But I thought I should at least address some of the issues that we have at the moment. One being that we are now stuck with a passenger contract. Currently the number is 818G. It's been having had other names over the years. But what we're saying here from a European perspective is now we really, with everything going on with the airlines, with IATA, we need to completely revise the way we do business. It's one issue, of course, as you all know, is NDC. Another one is the new Gen ISS, which is the new settlement system, the BSP. But generally speaking, we think we need a new way of doing business if we are IATA accredited and if it's considered to be a value of a travel agent. So number one for us in the coming years in Europe will be to revise the passenger agency program. Hence also my comment at the bottom, you can be assured that we'll be seeing a lot of discussions in the future on IATA, not just on NDC and New Gen ISS, but on a number of other issues, including ADMs and other wonderful concepts of the IATA program. Another issue which has a substantial bearing on the way we work in Europe is what is called the Air Passenger Rights Regulation. It was designed in 2004, or rather, it was agreed on in 2004, implemented in 2005, and it's now being scrutinized and will be revised, hopefully. And Michelle, your guess is probably as good as mine, but I'm thinking maybe 2015 we'll see a new text. And what it basically does, it ensures passenger rights for people that are traveling on an airline that either doesn't leave on time or downgrades people or even offloads them. The anecdote that I've heard, the whole reason for this particular regulation coming about was that one of the vice presidents of the Commission's family was, I believe, offloaded off a flight back in the early zeros, and that particular commissioner said that, okay, that's it, that was the final drop. Now I will make a regulation that at least tries to get in touch with the airlines and make them realize they have passengers that they need to take care of. And it's certainly been a good initiative, but it needs revision for various reasons. One thing being, I think Pedro mentioned that in his speech, we had an ash cloud in April of 2010, which put some pressure on the airlines because they had to take care of their passengers. Not all the airlines did. And we need to understand the force majeure, for instance, issues. What is an airline, what is a travel agent supposed to do in case of force majeure? Hopefully the compensation level to passengers will also increase. The claim, at least out there by those working with it, is that only 1% of passengers that are entitled to compensation at this moment receive the compensation from the airline, because the airline, for various reasons, tries to get out of the commitments or the money they have to pay, and passengers give up trying to get the money. So there's, in other words, a 99% improvement possibility if the regulation is changed. The visa code, it's already been mentioned, but for all the good things that are in the revised visa code, we've all talked about Schengen. I'm embarrassed to be part of a European Union which is not able to allow people to visit us. And I have to say my country, which is Denmark, is even worse because we've implemented all the additional requirements. So we're at the very, I should say to Pedro, we are talking to our government, but they don't care. We have an excuse for the political speech here, but we have an ultra right-wing focus in Denmark, which unfortunately means that everyone coming from maybe Sweden, Thomas, and maybe Norway are okay, but everybody else should stay away. And that makes it difficult for the political climate to implement the changes, which is, I'm sorry to say, I'm embarrassed. And the Commission has been listening to our problems. So the code that came up on the 1st of April, and it was not an April Fool. I thought, could you possibly have chosen another date? It was on 1st of April this year, it was announced. It's not April Fool's, it's a great proposal, but there are, as far as I know, 9 countries at least saying no, which means, you know very well, it's not going to happen. But it was supposed to create easier access for the application of Schengen visas. It is difficult to get a visa at the moment, we know that. Screening would be easy as well, and the extended validity for visa holders. In other words, you don't need to apply for a visa to Schengen every time you go. You could possibly get a 5 or 10-year visa if you qualify for that. Whether that's going to happen or not, we don't know, but it is an issue on which Ectaa is working hard, and I hope that also all of my colleagues from around the EU are doing the same in the national setting, because it is important that we try to change the setup. Then there's a presentation here which is not just solely focused on my co-presenter, Mr. Klenner, who will join me shortly, but it is important to, and I'm sure Christoph will be addressing that as well, what are the GDSs doing at the moment? What are the issues that we have with you, and what are the things that we need to discuss and get clarification on? One thing is, and can I just ask the room, who owns the passenger PNR, the booking, in your mind? And show of hands, okay, does the airline own the booking? Hands up. No? Maybe the airline owns the booking? 1. Does the travel agent own the booking? Yeah, okay, 15. And what about the GDSs? 1, 2. I think that is an interesting discussion. I think actually when you look at it from a legal perspective, it's actually the GDSs. That's what they claim at least. It's not the travel agents. I would certainly advocate that when I made the booking, I owned it. But I'm sure, and I don't know if you will be addressing that, Christoph, but certainly that's an issue for us in the discussions, also for other reasons in the future. The other thing is, of course, the privacy issues. If IATA, the hotels, whatever, come up with all the requirements that they want to have, including information about the customers that they have, that you book for them, who can keep, what passenger information is allowed to be in the system, first of all, and how long should it be in the system? How long can you access it, for instance, after the customer has traveled? It's a great concern of ours because it can be misused, as every type of information can. And we need to make sure that when we have private information about your travelers given over to someone else, handed over to someone else, that that's handled in a proper way. And then there's the open question, and that's for Christoph to answer in his own words. What about the dominant mode of distribution in the future? Will that be the GDSs? Will it be part of it at all? We will certainly want to be a part of that discussion in Ectaa, and I can assure you we are also taking those discussions in the right forums for very good reasons. It's also important to note that there are other issues at the moment in the EU. There's a recent EU Green Paper on safety and accommodation, which has an impact on those of us selling travel. Again, probably or most likely initiated by some unfortunate incidents around the world. But we need to look at that, at least within the EU, and look at how we can ensure that people, when they stay in a hotel or in a campground or wherever, that they are they're protected in a safe way. The other major issue coming up now is the sharing economy. How do you feel about Airbnb and God knows what? I know Jason from Australia loves Uber. There's nothing better, right? But some people say that the sharing economy takes money away from those that are established and have a number of rules they have to adhere to. Ubers, for instance, are not in my country protected by the regulations because they're not considered to be taxis sorry, and Uber is a taxi service, by the way. They're not considered to be taxis in our legal sense of the word. Airbnb is a seller of private apartments, houses, etc., directly to customers, not necessarily adhering to the local regulations on VAT, for instance. So I'm sure that issue will be coming up extensively in the coming months and years. In days. That's right. There's a big meeting, I know, which I unfortunately can't attend next week in Brussels on the 12th. Those of you that have the time to go to Brussels on the 12th should go, of course, because that's when that particular issue will be discussed within a commission setting. The increased multimodality in rail transport sounds like a highbrow thing, but it's actually very practical. And it's one of the areas in which the EU is focused on improving what is already taking place. In other words, you can combine rail and air, or rail and bus, or whatever, so that you get a better infrastructure in place than we have at the moment with our rail system. The rail system compared to the airlines is, excuse again my open angle on things, but it's antiquated. We still have national rail companies dominating the markets in the EU, and we need to look at that to change that, hopefully, within the next probably 10 years or so. The personal data protection issue is also coming on as an issue in the EU, and I'm sure we'll see changes to the laws in that area soon, because there's a lot of information running around about our customers, and we need to make sure that that's protected in the best possible way. And then Nout and colleagues from Travel Life, I on purpose did not put a presentation on Travel Life in this presentation because you'll be doing that a little later. But I have to say that sustainability or responsible tourism, as we discussed last night with Mr. Rifai, is definitely an initiative that is important and will become much more embedded, hopefully, in travel in the future. But we're also working on that. And then, finally, I would like to say that the Commission actually did do a study recently on the future of the European tourism product. And as it says here, we have three major issues that we need to deal with. One is seasonality. Depending on where you are in Europe, your season for tourism can be anywhere between 0 and 12 months, well, maybe 1 and 12 months. And how do we deal with that, especially when we want to make sure that staff stays with us when there's an off-season? We're seeing, unfortunately, an increase, and it's already been brought up several times. The tourism seems to be an easy place to put taxation on. There has been some discussion about what do we do in the future, and it's already been brought up by several. We have an association called WTAAA, World Travel Agency Associations Alliance, which works on global issues. And a number of the issues that we work with in Ectaa are also global issues. And in that respect, it makes sense to have WTAAA. So it is possible for those of you, and it's to some extent a sales pitch, and to some extent it's not, because it makes logic, it makes sense to be members of a larger group when you talk to the politicians. And by the way, the politicians tell us, we don't want to talk to 200 different travel agencies or associations around the world. We want to talk to one, maybe two. So on a global scale, WTAAA is set up. On a European scale, everything that goes on within Europe is Ectaa. And it's important that we don't fragmentize our position right now, in my opinion, but rather try to concentrate it to make sure that we have that voice that makes it impossible for politicians to forget about it. So Ectaa is open for membership for things relating to European issues, and I guarantee you WTAAA is also open for those that want to join and discuss global issues. And it's important that we think about that now in these times where everything is changing at a much faster pace than any time earlier in world history. And it's important that we are united. So, with that final word, thank you for listening.